Good morning. Welcome to the Public Works Committee for, I don't even know what date it is, April the 4th, 2016. Members of the public are advised that our meetings are webcast live by the City of Hamilton and temporarily archived on the city's website. Other individuals in the media may also be audibly and/or visually recording this meeting. Changes to the agenda. Madam Clerk, are there changes to the agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair. We have an added delegation request from Cycle Hamilton respecting item 8.2, the Strategic Road Safety Program. The presentation listed as 7.1 has been withdrawn. Discussion items 8.2A, we have a piece of correspondence from Walter Furlane and Liz Duval respecting bump outs on Barton Street. We've also added 8.3, report of the ATS review subcommittee, an added notice of motion respecting escarpment stairs, Kimberley East Mountain, and a revised due date for an OBL item 11.1.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Councillor Conley, Councillor Collins. I'm getting there. All right. Are there any declarations of interest? Seeing none. Approval of the minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the March 21st, 2016 Public Works Committee meeting? Councillor Collins, Councillor Conley. All those in favor? Carried. Delegation requests. We have a delegation request from the Royal Botanical Gardens respecting endangered turtles and wildlife corridor issues for today's meeting. What is the wish of the committee? Councillor Collins, Councillor Conley. All those in favor? Carried. We have a added delegation request from Benita Van Mittenberg, Cycle Hamilton, respecting the Strategic Road Safety Program for today's meeting. What is the wish of the committee? Councillor Jackson, Councillor Pasuda. All those in favor? Thank you. To our delegations. I will call on you to come forward in a few minutes to give your presentation. Consent items. Item 5.1. Minutes of the Waste Management Advisory Committee, January 25th, 2016. May I have a motion to receive? Question? Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I believe probably, hopefully, most of my colleagues and the appropriate staff saw the email or had a chance even to glance at my email over the weekend. And I realize these are just minutes, Madam Chair, from the Waste Management Advisory Committee, and the couple of questions I'll have will be for Director Matthews Malone that oversees this. And so please appreciate the last minutes I have here are from January. If the Advisory Committee has met since then, I wouldn't know that, not being on the committee, and wouldn't have any of the updated minutes. So it's what I had to go on, and I'm doing a bit of a preamble here, Madam Chair, before I ask a couple of questions and some assurances, if I can, from Betty. So when I just read through, and I know that to Betty and staff's credit, they're making the rounds, which I really appreciate, meeting with every member of council. I had my meeting a couple of months ago with them, probably a good hour and a half, and they're trying to get way ahead of the 2020 contract expiry currently for waste collection. So I know a multitude of the issues, Madam Chair, that I put on the table, saying that as far as I was concerned, I didn't want any real or perceived reduction in service levels. I put a lot of issues on the table. And when I read through the minutes, ironically, all I saw, or what seemed to be the theme mostly, was biweekly. And to me, my interpretation was, how do we get to biweekly? And then I read about the trash tags and council members supposedly saying that, you know, they're on for possibly considering eliminating them, or like other municipalities charging. And so, Madam Chair, I know issues like animal feces hanging around a house for 2 weeks instead of 1 week. How is the 1,100 apartment buildings, the multi-res, doing in terms of compliance, helping with their diversion rates, the business districts, The community recycling centers, the fee that we charge people there if they go with extra bags, I asked, is that possibly now timely to be under review and consideration? And if you recall, into February, staff brought at the 11th hour, it was no fault of theirs, given the provincial direction, but we were told at the 11th hour about the Waste Free Ontario Act. It's going to be coming, changing. My understanding was hopefully mostly attacking and targeting the producers of all this recycling material, like the big boxes where you have your little perfume bottle and then you got a big box around it that isn't necessary. So, Madam Chair, through you to Director Matthews-Malone, I guess my main concern when I read through the minutes was it seemed to be a direction was unfolding. It also seemed that a lot of issues, at least that I raised, weren't even on discussion points in the minutes here. This is the last meeting that I have a record of on my agenda from the end of January. So I think between my preamble and what I sent out on the weekend, Madam Chair, I know Betty has a good handle in terms of my overall concern, and if I could just get her to maybe make some public comments. Through you, Madam Chairman, to Director Matthews-Malone, please.
Through the chair, absolutely, I recognize that these are the minutes back from January. So we've had the opportunity to meet with each representative on the Public Works Committee, and we will be meeting, obviously, with our new councillor. We heard a lot of possible concerns, but we heard a lot of some opportunities as well. So we've met as staff to debrief on the discussions and outreach that we've had, and we're looking to generate a report to get back to Public Works Committee to do an overview of what we heard, also outlining some of those issues around some pending legislation. We've identified that we feel, it's the tip of the iceberg at this point in time, and we'll probably see a number of regulatory changes over the next number of years, 3 to 5 years. So our intent is to be in front of council with a summary of what we've heard, an outline of what we know and don't know about the next couple of years that we'll be facing, and then all in mind of what are we planning to do in preparation of our 2020 contract expiries, because we have 9 contracts coming up for renewal in 2020. So the intent is to start the discussion early, so that we know we have a good feel for what direction we're going. If we are looking at going out to retender some of the contracts, we may be out as early as 2018. So to start these discussions this early in the game, I think is worthwhile, so that we can focus on what do we want to look at for waste management within the city.
Thanks, Betty. So, Madam Chair, just a subsequent question. So, even illegal dumping wasn't referenced in these minutes. So, Betty, if at some point in time then, and I will fully respect and appreciate there will be a wide variation of opinions across the 16 members of council, ultimately where we end up with the final approval of a new contract past 2020. I guess I want to avoid what I would call the somewhat convoluted, messy debates of 2007 and the last term of council, 2013, that I thought in a lot of cases there were opportunities that it could have been avoided. And so when I don't see some of the issues here in these minutes even reflected, the animal feces, how, the impact of that if we went bi-weekly, how is the multi-residential community doing with diversion programs? Nobody's really given me an update, because that's a huge area that could move our 49% diversion rate, a point or two possibly higher. Legal dumping, like I said. The CRCs, is that fee still appropriate for people that have to take the extra bag? And then the trash tag issue itself, even the possibility of eliminating the extra 14 tags and or charging for them. So let me ask this, Betty, if at any point in time with the advisory committee, if any of these issues that at least I've raised, Madam Chair, were to fall off the table, or the advisory committee says, or staff with the advisory committee says, no further action is going to be taken, will there be at least an alert so that we can at least get a hold of that and debate that before that's permanently dropped from the agenda? Mr. Chairman, good morning. Through you to Betty for further comment, please.
Through the chair, what I'm hoping to do this year is to bringing this report forward is to identify the information that we've heard back, the ideas that we've heard back, and to provide the information by getting it out so far ahead of our sort of drop dead date to prepare for the 2020 is I'm hoping that if as council you're looking for additional information that perhaps we have not provided, that we can then get you the information, get out well ahead of it so that we can get you a fulsome complement of the data and the information that you need to look at the future of waste management in Hamilton. So our intent is to try to get out sooner in the process so that we can, if you do have questions that perhaps we're not providing you the level of detail that you're looking for, and I hope that we will hit it out of the park at the first try. But if there are gaps, that we at least have time to get that information to you so that we can debate that, or you can debate that prior to us going to tender or extensions of contracts or such.
So, thanks, Betty. So, Mr. Chairman, let me just ask it then in a little different way. The fact that in these minutes from the end of January, the fact that multi-res update, the fact that illegal dumping, the issue of animal feces, the charge at the CRCs, the fact that they weren't even talked about in the minutes, that doesn't mean then those issues have gone by the wayside, that they're still in play, and that at this particular end of January meeting, for whatever reason, the advisory committee and staff only focused on the theme of how biweekly would look, trash tag. In other words, did those other issues just not come in to the discussion at this meeting, or have they been dropped off the table? Mr. Chairman, through you to Betty, maybe just for further clarification, please. That's where I'm a little bit confused and concerned, Betty.
Through the chair, no, they haven't dropped off the table. And the problem we have is with the delay of the minutes. So actually at our last Waste Management Advisory Committee, which was about 2 weeks ago, I think, we actually provided a verbal overview of a number of the items that we heard from our consultations with the members of the Public Works Committee. So that's the interesting part about trying to prepare this report in terms of, trying to put a bit more meat on the bones on many of the questions that were raised. But we'll also be identifying a number of the possible opportunities that were raised as part of those discussions as well. So there's nothing, I think the bottom line is nothing is etched in stone at this point in time. What we're doing is we're starting the discussion.
Betty, thank you so much. That raises my comfort level, and I just thought so often with government, if we just don't have the early conversations, which I applaud you and staff for beginning, but sometimes along the process and journey when things suddenly are omitted or they're no longer on the radar, visible or in print in front of you, then one voice on council tends to worry then, okay, something's happened, and so it's no longer possibly part of the agenda. So you've raised my comfort level, Betty. A lot more still to be discussed. And the Waste Free Ontario Act, I take it at some point in time you'll give us a more detailed update on that, where the province is going. Maybe you just want to make a comment on that today, Betty, please. Mr. Chairman, through you.
Through the chair, we have not heard or received any updates from the province as of this point, and we do reinforce that the ones that will, if they proceed with the act, the devil will be in the detail of what's in the regulations. Those are, we're anticipating over the next 3 to 5 years, we'll see a number of regulations coming our way, and those are the ones also that we'll really have to stay out in front of, because they have the potential to have a significant impact, particularly on our recycling operations.
Thank you, Director Matthews-Malone. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Much appreciated.
Thank you. Is there any further comments? Seeing none, then I need a motion to receive 5.1. Moved by Councillor Connolly, second by Councillor Lloyd Ferguson. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. 5.2 is a report respecting an update on waste collection services. Are there any questions or any discussions on 5.2? Seeing none, may I have a motion to receive? Moved by Councillor Connolly, second by Councillor Collins. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. 5.3 is a report respecting the staff complement change for the waste collection section. Are there any questions or discussions? Councillor Jackson.
Mr. Chairman, through you to Betty. So, Betty, you've consulted with QP, and this is basically giving up a lead hand so that you can have an additional manager to oversee what we just received in 5.2 about the modern technologies. Mr. Chairman, through you to Betty, please for a comment.
Through the chair, this is a project manager, not a manager. And what we did last year, and I have to compliment Steve Bailey, who's our superintendent of waste collection. He's been just making phenomenal progress out with our waste collection staff.
Totally agreed.
We started last year doing an overview and a review of route optimization opportunities in light of the fact that we're going to be getting our AVL equipment through the corporate tender installed shortly. One of the things that was identified, or there were a number of things that were identified in our review, in that we were missing, we had some data gaps in the way that we were operating. So what we're looking to do out in this area is to step up our game relative to the use of technology. For example, we have a lot of hand-drawn routing maps. We don't optimize the use of GIS routing, so that's a big area. When we tried to do our first attempt at the tabletop exercise, we didn't have information on coding of routes, number and types of stops per route, lengths of route, the opportunities for geofencing, time and motion studies. So the intent of this position is to be the technical support for the management team in our waste collection, which consists of Stephen as the superintendent, and he has 3 frontline supervisors in the area. The 3 frontline supervisors have their hands full in terms of they're out in the field supervising staff. They have about 20 staff per supervisor and approximately 10 routes per supervisor. So it's a matter of trying to leverage some of the good technology that we're implementing out there with the intent of trying to continue. We've kind of taken the low-hanging fruit in terms of optimizations and efficiencies, and now we're wanting to step up our game with implementing more technological enhancements out there.
Thanks, Betty, for the explanation. And so this would be all in the area of Superintendent Bailey, I guess in the area of the customer service end of it with Manager Mike Stelmack, Colin Vidler, that whole area, the management team, Betty, that this project manager would report up through and keep a better handle on the modern technologies of waste collection. Mr. Chairman, through you to Betty.
Through the chair, that's correct. The position will report to Stephen Bailey as that will be the direct report. So, but they will be physically located out in the waste collection facility.
Thanks so much for the explanation, Betty. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Collins.
Yep, very quickly, the position, was it vacant already, and what is the difference in cost between the 2 positions?
Yes, it is vacant, and actually we're phasing out the lead hand position for waste collection, so there's some opportunities there. On a weekly basis, it's around $270 per week.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So at this point, I have no other speakers. Moved by Councillor Jackson, second by Councillor Collins. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. We have 5.4. Is the sign, kiosk, and poster sleep pilot program evaluation report. Is there any questions or discussions? Councillor Ferguson wishes to move it. Second by Councillor Vanderbeek. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Delegation 6.1. We now have a delegation from Tice, is it Tessmeyer? Head of the National Lands and Royal Botanical Gardens respecting rare turtle recovery and wildlife corridor issues. Please come forward and begin your presentation. I hope I pronounced that right, or close.
Thank you. You did very well, Mr. Chair. Tessmeyer, yes, Head of Natural Areas. I'm just here in support of item 8.1, but also to provide a little more of a broader update. I'll just skim through it, a couple of things just to highlight. There's a plan in the background for Cook's Paradise Marsh and Grindstone Marsh. It's, of course, the nature reserve. Among other things, it should be able to retain some turtles within the city. And so as part of studying these species that have become basically registered as endangered both provincially and federally, we developed a plan Key to that was the turtles hike off the property at nesting season, which meant several other partners were going to be involved in keeping these turtles going, particularly as if they can't reproduce, that's the end. So we'll update that as well. In the background, there's some engaged citizens in the town of Dundas, and actually it draws people from all over the city to come and join the residents in Dundas to intercept the turtles who are basically walking onto Coots Drive as they travel upland to nest. And so their principal goal is, of course, to keep them from getting run over as they travel across this causeway. So here we go. So a little reminder, the background map plan, basically the two big marshes. Let's see if I can do this with this. There we go. The two big marshes of Coots Paradise and Grindstone Marsh, mostly owned by the Royal Botanical Gardens, partially at the back of Coots Paradise towards Dundas, has Hamilton Conservation Authority with roads ring everything. In essence, we're going to focus on the back here. This is a whole other presentation, the state of the wetlands. But how did turtles end up on the endangered species list? Well, they live a really long time. They rarely successfully reproduce because of all the challenges they face. But basically, overall in the province and internationally, habitats, because they're generally watered, and at the bottom end, wetlands where everything drains to, they're challenged. And then they hike upland when they reach nesting season to find high, dry land to lay their eggs, and there's usually a road ringing that body of water. Also in the background, if you're anywhere near an urban area, you would have lost your wildlife populations would just be completely out of whack, and you end up with raccoons, for example, and nothing like eggs over old Tim Hortons cups and wrappers for snacks. Here's a little sense. So snapping turtles, that's what this graph really portrays. Because of the Great Lakes Water Quality Agreement back in the 1970s, which was renewed in the 70s, there was the desire to come up with indicator species for the health of the Great Lakes. What resulted is Coots Paradise Marsh, being one of the big ones, actually became one of those measuring points for Lake Ontario. This is, as a result, you can actually get a feel for how many snapping turtles, one of the many turtles, there used to be. And of course, there would have been more before that. But you get a feel that there's the population 600-ish around 1985. There was more studies done in the mid-90s, cut in half, more studies done recently. They're dwindling. And that's because of those other former reasons. So this is basically stars on this map. This is Coots Paradise map, mean nesting sites. Known nesting sites where you encounter turtles of any stripe. The bigger the star, the more popular. Turns out the most popular one is on the back north side of Coots Paradise, but before you cross a road, which actually means those are the ones who didn't get run over. Basically, turtles would move in this direction, which is upland and upriver to nest, and since the sun rises from the bottom and shines on these slopes over here, which face south, that's where the warm air is, the warm sunshine, which means that's where they're going to nest. You don't nest on the south-facing, shady, cold areas because you need the heat of the sun to incubate the eggs. Which turns out this side becomes the key area. So, in the background, there's been a whole crew of volunteers. This is information. Here's McMaster. This is the back of the marsh. So this is a road, Coots Drive, going into Dundas or into Hamilton McMaster. This is the linking road, Olympic Drive. This is Old Ship Canal, the pond. Anyway, colored dots. This is an amalgamation of mostly volunteer information, but in 2015, the Hamilton Conservation Authority also chipped in an intern to help record information. And so what we did was we did our best to take the months of June and in 2015 September and see if we could plot them on a map where things had been hit, crossing species. In the end, pink is turtles. Also useful to know, there's some experimental, can we block things with the road? This was just in 2015, this temporary fence. This has been 2 years there, and you'll see a little bit more, but this became a permanent one because over here, there's a big overwintering area for turtles and they march out. So we'll see how that does. But I'm going to highlight some of the partners' initiatives because, of course, it was the city, the Hydro, Hamilton Conservation Authority, and the RBG all working together here along with the volunteers. So Hydro, they had a problem with their works yard. Their fence was a nice fence to block people, but they didn't go to the ground, so the turtles would sneak under the fence. They'd get run over in the works yard or nest in a spot where a 50-ton truck would drive over them. So they blocked the bottom. They then also built a nesting pile here, which is just a pile of gravel. And that definitely intercepts some turtles before they reach Olympic Drive, and that's an example of a turtle on it, a big snapping turtle. So some good work has gone on there. We've pretty much completed everything we could do with Hydro 1. If we move over to the RBG in 2015, we of course were looking for where turtles were nesting because of course we want to at least protect a few of them from the raccoons and the skunks, and mostly the raccoons. So we covered them over, and so we found 68 nests, 41 of them we covered over. And in the background, there's some nests that end up in construction sites or gardens that are getting renovated, things like that. So those ones we just pull into an incubator in the building, and so 10 of those were rescued. Of course, there was a little extra work with rail construction along the ridge by the rock garden. Turtles, of course, love that dug up dirt. 150 little turtles were released back to the environment, which included 2 nests of Blanding's turtles. So they're the most rare of the turtles that we still retain. They're rare basically in the world. We kind of use them as a symbol of, well, we may or may not be able to retain them because we only have maybe 20, but we're going to take a good shot at it, and that'll be hopefully inspiring to all those who work on turtles. Also in the background, we built 2 interim piles back behind the arena that also encourage turtles to nest on them. And here, of course, is a snapping turtle near Olympic Drive on the Hydro property in an area that's being renaturalized and right beside the previous turtle nesting bed. The Hamilton Conservation Authority, they did all sorts of work. This was their first foray into this lower end of Spencer Creek for looking at issues. They installed a temporary fence, which really amounts to silt fence because that's very portable, easily put in, easily taken out, and they put it in during the spring migration. The goal is, of course, principally to keep the turtles off the road, but also to see how far this may have to go if we're really going to manipulate where turtles migrate. There's a bridge in the background, and the goal is to send them under the bridge rather than over the road. So they contributed an intern who would walk the road weekly and actually summarized the volunteers' work and the little bit of work the RBG did on the road to ultimately generate a future map that you'll see here. They also then looked into their habitat in the back to see what kind of turtle activity there really was in their territory. Then from the City of Hamilton, well, there's quite a variety of initiatives. I'll focus on this one in particular. You can see this is Coots Drive as it comes past McMaster in towards Dundas. Down at the bottom is the magical Spencer Creek Bridge where the main river flows into Coots Paradise, and the goal is to send all the wildlife under the bridge instead of over the road. And of course, it's been a challenging location for a long time, and you can see there's a watch out for deer sign, watch out for turtles sign. So this is the new angled fence. It's 4 feet high, slightly less than 4 feet because it's on an angle. It works as a deer fence remarkably well because there's woodlands on both sides. This is the deer area as well because this drops off on a very steep slope, and so as you approach this, normally a deer fence would be 8 feet high. At 4 feet high and you're down the slope, you can't clear it. And I don't think a single deer got onto the road in this, and certainly there is tremendous deer tracks under the bridge currently, which has I think dramatically cut down on collisions. There may not even have been one in 2015. So anyway, how did it actually work? Here's the bridge just for information. So the deer are walking under this side, people are walking under this side. It's a little tight. That's a trails issue unto itself. But that's Spencer Creek, and that's the corridor we're shooting for, which if you come towards me, that's Coots Paradise. If you go up the valley, that's Dundas Valley Conservation Authority. So results, 2015, here's that curved road, here's that fence. Basically, nobody was hit, except for right there where this one turtle snuck under the gate. We patched up the gate. These are the learnings. And you can see there's a real bias towards this direction. Turtles are getting around, but there was a lot of turtle nesting found on a rail trail here, and certainly the deer are moving under there. So we're definitely heading in the right direction. This is just a real pie chart of it all, of those numbers. There's perhaps, 180 things recorded and mapped. Mostly turtles because it is June, which is turtle movement season, as opposed to, say, amphibians. If it was April, then this would be a huge other pie. But you get a little feel, but the The upshot of the pie chart is pretty much everything that's being found on the road in that section beyond the permanent fence is little, not big, which means there's an angle that you then work towards, which is the point of all this monitoring. And really it comes down to we need to focus on little animals, not big animals in that lower section. And so there's ways to do that. And this is where we'll be heading in the future. This is a little cross section. There's a little critter. Get off there. Road. Natural area, side barrier. Side barrier maybe 2 feet tall. If you're looking at little animals, you slant it so that it becomes difficult. You basically fall off, and if you happen to be on the road, you can climb over. At 2 feet, it's quite low profile, and kind of hits our theme of small animals. We'll see how we do. Here's examples that are occurring around the province. Early days, you can go with steel, which is industrial. This is a product that comes from the UK because, well, there's a market for it, it would seem, and it's very popular in California. It is being considered. It depends on the colors, of course, in the background. This is in a provincial park in Ontario. Basically, to me, it looks like a corrugated pipe that's been cut into thirds, makes that curve, goes on the back of a guardrail, and this is, if you zoomed in, what it would look like when it's finished. Say that would be that lip right there. This sort of disappears, and on the backside, it's kind of a deep hill. So there we go. Here's another example that's probably coming for corridors. This is basically a gully cut into the road with a grate put over top. And here's another area that's just like Cootes Paradise. Basically, Cootes Paradise is the long point of Lake Ontario. So Long Point is a massive wetland system on Lake Erie. This is the Long Point National Wildlife Reserve. If you drove this way, you'd end up in the provincial park. This is the inner bay over here. Between 2008 and 2014, a series of fences were erected along the roadside. It's a very low causeway. Culverts were put in. There's one of those road crossings. And turtles and wildlife are moving along. So basically, this is a thing that's going on around the province at this point. And in summary, basically all the stakeholders are in on we can upgrade this system. There's not just Hamilton, but all sorts of jurisdictions working on this. In 2016, certainly the Hamilton Conservation Authority will be looking a little more in detail at the roadside. At the RBG, we'll be tracking our 2 or 3 females to see where they nest to make sure we can raise their little ones, because that's all there is in the whole of Hamilton. Protecting eggs again, ongoing recovering the wetlands, so it inspires us all, because it's certainly visible from every road you drive at a distance. And the residents of Dundas, they'll be out there looking for those turtles wandering. And most importantly, we'll have a formal wildlife committee, which is really the end game of item 8.1, which is we meet together, gather information, make good decisions on where to go as infrastructure gets rebuilt. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of the delegation? Now I need a motion to receive. Moved by Councillor Vanderbeek, second by Councillor Connolly. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you very much for the very informative presentation. 6.2, we now have the delegation from Benita Van Miltenberg with Hamilton Cycling Respect and the Hamilton Strategic Road Safety Program.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Benita Van Miltenberg. I'm the co-chair of Cycle Hamilton's Advocacy Committee. I'm pleased to be here this morning to speak to you on behalf of Cycle Hamilton regarding item 8.2, the Hamilton Strategic Road Safety Program update. I'll only take a few minutes of your time with the following goals. I'd like to first introduce Cycle Hamilton to the committee. I'd like to reinforce our support of Councillor Green's Vision Zero motion. I'd like to communicate our commitment to working with the City of Hamilton and other stakeholders, such as the Hamilton Strategic Road Safety Program, as it moves forward. And finally, just to provide a couple suggestions for the committee's consideration as this work moves forward. Cycle Hamilton formed as a not-for-profit organization in January of 2016. The organization is comprised of cyclists and partners from a variety of community organizations who see the value in working together to increase the amount of safe, confident, and knowledgeable cyclists in Hamilton by promoting better infrastructure and developing partnerships with organizations, community groups, and citizens. We applaud the great work that has taken place in the city over recent years and look forward to working in collaboration with the City of Hamilton, neighborhood organizations, major institutions, nonprofit organizations, and other stakeholders to work towards a safer and healthier cycling network. We aim to be a grassroots voice for cycling in Hamilton and are very happy to see that cycling and active transportation are key priorities within the city's Our Future Hamilton Visioning Initiative that will be informing a new 10-year strategic plan. As we represent cyclists who get around this city for both work and play during all 4 seasons of the year, including today, we 100% support the vision of working towards a goal of 0 road fatalities in our community. In the wake of too many unnecessary and avoidable pedestrian, cyclist, and automobile-related deaths, we feel it is due time that the City of Hamilton make a bold and lasting commitment to Vision Zero. We are thus very pleased to see Councillor Green bring forward the motion to develop a comprehensive road safety plan that incorporates best practices, including Vision Zero. We applaud Council for supporting this motion and thank City staff for their work to bring this report to the committee today. Cycle Hamilton is committed to Vision Zero. No loss of life on our streets or roadways is acceptable. We are committed to partnering with the City of Hamilton and other organizations, residents, and stakeholder groups to work together towards this goal. While we have a long way to get there, we applaud the many initiatives outlined in this report as excellent steps in the right direction. We are especially happy to see that City Council's 2014 commitment to re-establish the Hamilton Strategic Road Safety Program has progressed in a meaningful way. Moving forward, we do hope that the Road Safety Committee or Task Force consults with the outcomes of the City's own Our Future Hamilton initiative that is currently informing the City's 10-year strategic plan. Having reviewed the final Our Future Hamilton report, we'd like to take the time to remind committee that road safety and community safety are referenced time and again. A proactive commitment to Vision Zero will be a signal to the 50,000 plus Hamilton residents who contributed to Our Future Hamilton that the city takes the health and safety of all citizens as a top priority. For us, Vision Zero remains the ultimate goal that goes for cyclists, pedestrians, and drivers. So on that note, I would just like to end with a couple of recommendations and considerations as the committee discusses today's report. First off, I'd like to remind you that evidence clearly indicates that best practice would include reducing speed limits to 30 kilometers per hour, not 40 kilometers per hour, if we want to eliminate pedestrian fatalities. Reducing vehicle speeds from 50 kilometers per hour to 40 kilometers per hour reduces pedestrian fatality risk in a collision from 45% to around 20%. But cutting speeds to 30 kilometers an hour reduces pedestrian fatality risk to almost 0. This is a significant difference. Secondly, while the report outlines some excellent safety initiatives the city has taken on, we disagree with the recommendation that the Hamilton Strategic Road Safety Program, vision, mission, and values are already aligned with the principles of Vision Zero, as the report suggests. To fully support the Vision Zero goal of 0 traffic fatalities, we strongly recommend that program's Goal 1, at the top of page 14 in the report, be adjusted to a target of 0 fatalities on our roads. Period. Only then will Goal 3, that which supports Vision Zero, be true. Moreover, given that the second goal of the program is for the City of Hamilton to be recognized as having the safest traffic record in Canada, we see a Vision Zero commitment as the only way to work towards this second goal. We urge the city to make a clear and visionary commitment to this goal. Thank you for your time today. We look forward to working with the city and other partners to continue striving towards a safer and healthier Hamilton. On that note, I would like to leave you with one question to consider during your deliberations. How many deaths on our road are acceptable? Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, motion to receive, Councillor Collins, second by Councillor Ferguson. All those in favour? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you very much for the presentation. Budget 7.1, as noted by committee clerk, the presentation about the parks trail system has been withdrawn, right? So we're going to 8.2? 8.1. 8.1. I had at 8.1 as being approved as part of the RBG presentation. Okay, so we'll add it as 8.1 in your procedures. Moved by Councillor Vandenbrink, second by Councillor Jackson. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Okay, 8.2 has already been approved, so we move on to item 8.2, respecting the Hamilton Strategic Road Safety Program update. We have added items 8.2A, corresponds from Walter Ferren list bump outs on Barton Street between Lottridge and Barnsdale. Is there any discussion on this item? Councillor Jackson.
Yeah, on both the report and the correspondence, Mr. Chairman, you're allowing some latitude since you introduced both?
Yep.
Okay, so this, just on 8.2A, from the, I guess it's the business owners on Barton Street, and if they want the bump out, I support that, but Mr. Chairman, I think you'll be delighted to see the bottom part of the correspondence is, despite their optimism, the reality is that this community is very fragile in many ways, speaking of Barton Street and the business district, primarily between Lottridge and Barnsdale. Recently, we've been made aware by city staff that the intention is to remove the bump out, creating rush hour routes on Barton during LRT construction. Removing this bump out would have great negative effect. We suggest alternate routes for the LRT construction begins. Mr. Chairman, to your credit, you've been sounding the alarm bells all along that when disruption and construction begins on the King-Queenston corridor, where exactly are traffic planning to put the additional volumes of traffic during probably a 3 to 5 year period of construction? And here's one business owner constituent of that area saying, we've heard it may be Barton Street and we don't want it on Barton. So this is going to get even more convoluted and complicated and complex. So I just want to congratulate you, Mr. Chairman. You've been sounding that alarm bell to some criticism, saying, folks, I just want to know where the additional traffic is going to be rerouted to. Here's already some pushback from a potential new route. Now, Mr. Chairman, on the report itself, which I support, can I just ask through you to either Manager Martin White, who's here, and Superintendent Dave Ferguson, both who just do a terrific job in terms of leadership of this division. And I've noticed a tremendous change, especially in terms of approach, style, and outreach from what it used to be several years ago. And so I say that for the public record. To endorse this, especially under the 40 kilometer per hour, Mr. Chairman, through you to Martin, I noticed that now the 40Ks are going on some of the feeder streets within neighborhoods that aren't necessarily traditionally in front of the school or around the school zone, but feeder streets into the school and or city park area. And although overall, I believe the 40 kilometer per hour is worthwhile and supportive, I have had from some of my constituents within the neighborhoods and live in the neighborhoods, so they're not driving through, but live in the neighborhoods, who have said to me, Tom, we live 3-4 streets away from where the school and the park are, and yet the 40K sign just went up. So my point being, I didn't have advanced communication. I won't speak for the others, but Mr. Chairman, through you to Martin, could at least that be part and parcel of moving forward, particularly on this particular issue? Mr. Chairman, through you to Martin for a comment, please.
Through the chair. Absolutely, Councillor. We can make sure that all of these strategic safety issues are communicated through all the ward councillors' offices.
Okay, terrific. I appreciate that very much. Secondly, Martin, on your Appendix D and temporary speed humps, which will be Appendix E, my apologies, page 1, Appendix E of this report. So this is one I've wrestled with, and a number of my neighborhoods who have requested on residential streets, particularly where they might be near a plaza, a busy intersection, where motorists may want to cheat and want to go through the side street, where I brought to your attention and your department's attention requests for speed humps, and yet I don't see really any rhyme or reason as to when a temporary speed hump bump gets approval. Mr. Chairman, through to Martin, maybe for a comment and an explanation on how this policy and or request unfolds, please. Mr. Chairman, through to Martin.
Through the chair, particularly with speed bumps, the process is actually evolving right now. We initially were reluctant to put in any because they pose certain problems in neighborhoods. However, we were pretty assured that we had councillor support in wards 1, 2, and 3 primarily, and active residents on the street wishing to proceed with speed bump installation. What we found in our early stages was that we'd put them in, and within sometimes weeks we were removing them because the complaints were loud and clear, and it was hard to sustain leaving it in the location. So what we've done now is move to a situation where we poll the full residents of the area and ensure that there is support for it by the neighbors, and also then we go to the ward councillor's office, or sometimes, depending on who the councillor is, sometimes the councillors themselves like to send out the correspondence. So we have done a multiple consultation process in order to make sure that when they do appear on the roadway that people are in support of it. They also don't have all the desired effect that people think they're going to. They cause noise. You can't drive an ambulance over them comfortably. They shouldn't be put on HSR routes, and a whole bunch of other things that make them unacceptable as well.
So, thanks so much. That's a very thorough explanation and answer, Martin, which gives both sides of the equation, and hence, I guess, your title still of temporary speed humps, as you've called it on Appendix E. Martin, you have about $9.5 million in the reserve from red light cameras. Mr. Chairman, through you to Martin.
As of the closing of 2015, I believe that was the amount.
And I believe currently we have about 19 locations across the city, and hopefully you're going to add, I understand, maybe 6 or 7 more, Mr. Chairman, through you.
Through the chair, we have 19 now. We're coming forward to committee in the next, probably at the next meeting, if not the one just after, with a recommendation for another 5 locations, and we had committed putting in 5 locations a year for the next 5 years. So essentially 25 locations over the next 5 years.
Fantastic. That's great. As everyone knows, for 15, 16 years since it was installed here in Hamilton, I've been a big supporter of that program. And Martin, with that kind of reserve money, please buy lots and lots and lots of cans of paint, because I have lots of ladder and zebra crosswalk intersections that Superintendent Dave Ferguson will keep him and his crews busy. Thanks so much, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Martin.
Thank you. I don't have any other speakers, so I'll ask Councillor Vanderbeek to take the chair. I just want to thank, but it's not just me. I think there's been a number of councillors around this the table has raised some of the concerns about what the traffic loads are and how they're going to be efficiently moved through the city during the construction phase of the LRT. I thank for the credit, but I know that many councillor colleagues I've talked to have some of the very same concerns. So those are my only comments. I'll take the chair back. Councillor Ferguson.
Yes, thank you to Martin. Martin, thank you very much for making the comment in reaction to Councillor Jackson's question that you'll consult with the councillor. I just want to be clear, you'll consult with us before you make the change. Is that true?
I think what I'm going to do is that before we do anything, we will always send an email to the ward councillor's office advising them of anything that didn't come through their office when it comes to specifics covered by the Strategic Road Safety Program.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the progress you've made in Ancaster around school zones, kilometer posting, and that's been well received, although I have learned the hard way where I put a stop sign in that seemed reasonable at a request. I got about 200 emails stripping body parts off me for doing that. And so I have to be very cautious about these things. These things can be very critical. So I just, through you, Mr. Chairman, want to thank you for making sure that we're well aware before you make any changes so we can communicate that out to our constituents.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. I have no other speakers, so I need to move 8.2A to receive, moved by Councillor Collins, second by Councillor Jackson. All those in favor? Carried. Now I need, on the report, item 8.2, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, may I have a motion to approve 8.2? Moved by Councillor Vanderbeek, second by Councillor Doug Connolly. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. 8.3, we now have on the added item 8.3, report 16001 of the Accessible Transit Service Review Subcommittee. Are there any questions and or discussion on the report? Seeing none. Yes.
Just one question. I just want to make sure, though it seems fine, but have transit staff seen this and are they satisfied with the recommendation?
Sure.
Dave here.
Sorry, is this regarding the ATS report?
Correct.
Yeah, going to on-demand service on 3-year pilot is, because we went through a very exhaustive debate and decision during the budget process on changing how DARTS operates and going to these single passenger vans, which I assume is how it's going to go to the on-demand service. But I want to make sure that our transit staff have seen the recommendation from the committee and are supportive of it.
Through you, Mr. Chair, transit staff, I think, have just seen this. I wouldn't say they are supportive or not supportive at this point. I think if committee were to receive the information and allow transit staff to have a look at it would be the way to proceed.
So this is just an ATS report that we're dealing with. Staff will, if on request, will be looking at it and responding to the number of the items that the committee put forward.
Except I see the recommendation is that we adopt the recommendation. So you want to have it referred back to transit staff for their comments?
I see George here. What was the essence of that? Or Councillor Miller is the chair of the ATS committee. Want to make any comment for clarification? Well, the issue is the on-demand service pilot program.
If people are looking at what the rationale surrounding it is, the consumer group clearly have over the years demonstrated a keen interest in having us pursue the on-demand system. I've always stated clearly at committee, and I represent council on that committee, that it is unaffordable, but there are theories to the contrary. Having said that, the only way we're going to deal with the issue is to actually have the feasibility study completed in order to conclude what that impact really is. Mr. Nolan, Tim Nolan, who is a consumer member and an employee at McMaster University, was eloquent in his presentation here the other day, and he's convinced that you can actually save us money. Others are convinced otherwise. Having said that, the only way we're really going to deal with this issue is to have Mr. Brovac and the staff assess the matter accordingly, report back to us so that we at least have a frame of reference for future discussions, as opposed to leaving it in limbo perpetually as it has been for a number of years.
Mr. Chairman, I heard our acting general manager of public works say refer it to transit staff, report back. I heard our chair say the same thing, that we need to have transit staff input into this. So at the appropriate time, I move this be referred to our staff to report back as soon as possible.
I think that was the intent, for them to come back with a feasibility, but
That's not what it says, though.
fair enough. So we'll take that as a direction, sure. It would only complement.
I don't. Yeah, but we don't do darts.
Sorry. Could I just suggest? I think what we can do is make it clear that this was an ATS suggestion going to staff to further review. If we want to formalize it through this particular committee, that a feasibility a report come back on that particular request, I think that is prudent. So I certainly would entertain that. Moved by Councillor Ferguson, second by Councillor Murla.
That was the motion at committee. So through you.
But that's not what it says here.
Well, Madam
So,
Clerk,
can I
can you elaborate on that?
I agree with Councillor Marula. That was the motion to come back to ATS with a feasibility report.
That's
ATS.
intent. I'm perfectly happy with that.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Okay. So I just not. I don't think it's captured. Is it
I'll
captured here?
take an amendment on
Well,
it.
I'll amend that clearer. But what does it read now, Madam Clerk? At the end of the day, that's the intent. So that this would be report back subsequent to a feasibility study.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Murla, second by Councillor Connolly. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Mr. Chairman, okay. The staff be directed to report back to the Accessibility Transit Services Review Subcommittee respecting the feasibility of moving from the current shared ride. What part of this don't people understand?
Okay, that's
So
clear.
it's there. It's clear. I can't make it clearer. So it's there.
So it's redundant. It's there. We have consensus. All those in favor of 8.2? Any opposed? Carried. Okay, now we're at 8.3. We now have on added item 8.3, report 16001 of the, we just dealt with that, didn't we? Sorry, 10.1, we have motions. Councillor Collins, will you please introduce your notice of motion? I want to find out what his desire is.
Yeah, I'm not certain whether there's a need to wait another meeting. I'd move it, and I know Tennessee's here to answer any questions from a technical perspective. I would move to waive the rules to introduce it as a motion.
So moved to waive the rules, second by Councillor Marilla. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Councillor Collins.
On the main motion, as I understand it, I believe Councillor Jackson wanted to second it. There's an issue in terms of the stairs, and as I understand it, speaking to staff, Councillor Jackson and I both met with park staff. This cannot wait until the 217 budget process. So maybe through you, Mr. Chairman, if I could quickly to Tennessee to give a brief synopsis in terms of the scope of the work and the reasons why it's here in front of us today.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we feel that when the stairs were built, they were built with a bit of a sway in there for the amount of people, but it's getting to the point where the sway is becoming more noticeable than it has in the past, and we've had the engineer come in to have a look at it. He feels if we deal with the issue now, we should be able to have it corrected properly.
So with that, Mr. Chairman, I would move it.
Second by Councillor Jackson. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. May I have a motion to approve items 11.1A and B regarding change to the outstanding business list? Moved by Councillor Pasuda, second by Councillor Collins. All those in favor? Any opposed? Carried. I just want to take this opportunity. I want to thank Councillor Vanderbeek for fulfilling the chair. I was at a major announcement this morning. Actually, it was the grand opening. I hold it here, the grand opening of the new transit hub at Mohawk College. It's an incredible work that they did with Metrolinx. This hub, they have heated shelters. It was great on this morning, like this morning. And so everyone huddled into and kept pressing that button to make sure that heat was resonating in the shelter. I can tell you, Minister McMeekin was there as well as the mayor. This takes some of the pressure off noise and some of the issues of pollution and the neighbors that live behind Mohawk College, because the transit system would used to come around the internal part of Mohawk College and impact the neighborhood. So this alleviates that issue, but even more important, it really does create a central location that provides convenience that will facilitate a broader, more comprehensive, vibrant transit system on the mountain right through the east end. It's the beginning, as I indicated this morning, as in my humble opinion, a beginning of a new and vibrant focus on transit on the mountain. And I want to thank Mr. Dixon, Metrolinx, all the staff, our traffic staff, our planning staff that did a lot of work on it. It is an incredible location. And I did say that on West 5th, we now have bike lanes all the way to Mohawk College, south of Mohawk. There are issues that there's no cycle lanes on the north side of Mohawk College. That is coming in conjunction with the Claremont study, because once they determine the safe route for the transit system, the cyclists to get up Claremont access, they're looking at pathways now to access Mohawk College. So that is on the radar. I want to make it clear for those critics that thought that we weren't focusing on the cycling portion, that it will be built in, and it will be built in to the transportation hub. So again, great morning. Students were all excited, and it is probably, I would say, a game changer on the mountain in respect to what transportation hubs should be. They're also looking at a second stage of private sector partnership where there'll be convenience stores and coffees and so forth. So this is where people could actually wait for their bus in comfort. Thank you for your patience. At this point, I look for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Ferguson, second by Councillor Connolly. All those in favor?